Alright, me. It is the 2nd, October 2nd, and I once again finished reading another book. It's The Battle of the Labyrinth, which is the 4th book in the Percy Jackson series. Once again, very, very fun. I do have to probably say, so at least, you know, my least favorite out of the series up to this point, but I think it's because it falls into a lot of the things I was talking about with the middle books within a series, of where there is quite a bit of setup, but then also it's just like it's a book that needs to set up a lot of things to get to the end point of where we need to be, right? And so, you know, within that, it's not going to be my favorite. In terms of, like, you know, characters and whatnot, and just kind of plot points and story points and whatnot, really the more interesting of kind of like it's portrayed is the is Grover's plot line, side plot that's been occurring throughout the series so far, in which he finds what he's been looking for this entire time in Pan, but then it is the fact that Pan is actually dead and has been dead, and it's just that his memory has kept him alive up to this point from the satyrs. Yeah, it's very much like I can't even remember his name now, but the 100-arm man that Tyson recognizes when they're in the labyrinth, right? It is that these are, it's a very interesting thing and a very interesting take on the whole, you know, you die multiple times, and when, not necessarily when your name is last spoken, but rather when you're who you are and what your legacy is and what you've tried to do with your life is forgotten or ignored. That's when you die as one of these immortal beings. And so it's a very interesting environmentalist viewpoint, and that, you know, it is no longer about finding one person to solve your issues, right? It is now everyone's responsibility to solve this problem, right? It speaks to me a lot of something that I had written when I was in either late high school or college, but it was about the fascination that and the importance of superhero movies to and like why they became so popular so suddenly, and like, you know, this sort of culture that had always been kind of an offshoot or not treated as well suddenly became mainstream, right? It was because, you know, we're dealing with these problems as humans that are now much more and much larger and much more conceptual based rather than they are physical based. And it is this kind of fantasy, right, of kicking things down the road, of where eventually someone singular person or some singular idea will come and revolutionize everything, right? Because that's how we kind of set up our history books, is that we talk about these main figures within history and about how they've changed the world, when in reality is so much more than that, right? It is that there is so much going on and so much occurring all at the same time that then leads to this change and allows for this singular person to help. And, you know, it's very, very nice to see that, you know, kind of put in environmentalist writing. So yeah. The other kind of through plot line, I guess there's kind of two, right? There is Annabeth and her quest, right? And the fact that she is finally leading a quest as the camper that has been there at Camp Half-Blood the longest out of anyone, and she finally gets to lead it. And as it turns out, the person that she needs and has to help her is immortal, right? Is someone who's not related to the gods by blood in any way. And there's this, significant issue there, right? Of where, going back to the last book, right? Of you have Annabeth, who's this character that, although is designed as this very smart, very, very wise person and character, right, has significant issues in letting go, right, and not being in control. And so, this whole ordeal in which it is not her decision, but it is Percy's decision, and it is Percy's friend, that all kind of, coalesces into this frustration and anger in, not only what is happening, but who she is, right? Which is fascinating. Yeah. And then I think, the other kind of through line that's occurring throughout this entire thing is Percy Jackson and his girl problems, right? Which is not something I'm as interested in. It's not. But it is also, you can view the whole thing very metaphorically, right? Is that he is a, young person who is getting into this world of, teenage dating and hormones and all of these kind of, in a way, petty relationships that end up occurring at this age, which, is important for development, right? It's important for kids to experience some of these things because it helps them develop who they are as people, and helps them figure out in a scale where people can still help them. So that way, when people are not always there to help them, that they can then understand these differences and what's important, and how these relationships work and whatnot, right? But you can view the whole thing as the Battle of the Labyrinth as a metaphor for a person who's constantly changing and constantly dealing with all of his issues in which he doesn't quite understand how they all work, right? He's got these three girls that are in some way in love with him, and he's just a guy, right? He's just a guy. Yeah. I think it's a very interesting way to introduce Calypso into the story, because you meet another daughter of Atlas, but then also, right, it's this character that is within Greek mythology is both cursed and blessed, of where, in terms of curses, it's a very heartbreaking one, very emotionally tiring one. But in terms of, in comparison to some of the other curses that we see, she gets off pretty lightly. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing. Yeah. The other plot that's occurring is the Nico plot, right? And, to make the child of Hades / Pluto, because I think he's still actually the child of Pluto, I don't quite remember, but make him kind of like this lone wolf figure is, kind of, I think, in a way, cliche, right? But it makes sense, right? This is a character who has felt that they've only ever had their sister, and their sister doesn't respond to them, but does respond to this person they've been blaming the whole time for the death of their sister. And then, the questioning of, is there really a home for me, right? There is no cabin for Hades at Camp Half-Blood, right? He does not have a throne in Olympus. All of these things in which, like, he's just this extra person that is doing something that no one else wants to do, right? And so, even the animals and the horses don't like to be around Nico because he smells of death. And this kind of desperation for finding a way back to the way that things were, or you know, this feeling of loss and being lost and not having a place to go within the world. Both those, you know, really make sense to a character like Nico, who is, you know, at this point 11 or 12, I think. But yeah, you know, excited to read the last one. I might just read it tonight so I don't have to read it in the middle of class tomorrow and then be emotional in the middle of it, in front of a whole bunch of 17, 18-year-olds, because they're gonna go like, what in the world are you talking about, dude? But yeah, that is the Battle of Labyrinth.